evening, everyone. This is Hideo Fukushima, Consul-General of Japan in Houston. Welcome to tonight's special video program celebrating Japan's National Day for 2021. This year, our National Day will also be commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Japanese consulate in Houston. But before that commemoration, let us first celebrate the Japanese Emperor's birthday, which is Japan's National Day. On February 23rd of this year, 2021, His Majesty Emperor Naruhito turned 61 years old. For the health of His Majesty and the enduring friendship between Japan and the United States, let us now make a toast. Toast. Thank you very much. This year, 2021, marks 80 years since the Japanese consulate in Houston was established. The original office first opened on March 2nd, 1941, as the Houston branch of the former Consulate-General of Japan in New Orleans. According to our records, Japanese ambassador to the US, Kensuke Horinouchi, understood Houston's remarkable economic development and suggested establishing a new consulate there. In his official 1939 opinion on the matter, Ambassador Horinouchi expressed the need for the new office as follows. Because of my recent trip to America's southern region, I'm keenly aware of the urgent need to establish a new consulate in Houston. This is in light of the area's political and economic relations and the current state of Japanese development there. The political and economic importance of America's southern region is increasing year by year. In particular, Houston, in the heart of Texas, is a traditional cotton market that recently has shown astonishing development in producing oil. On the issue of trade and public relations, I see an urgent need to establish a consulate there. Interestingly, even in those days, the ambassador's opinion states there was already Japanese development in the region. Our records show there was a growing community of about 500 Japanese residents in Texas at that time. A few Japanese companies were already active in the region's cotton trade. Together, they employed a small number of Japanese expats. But most of the region's Nikkei, or people of Japanese ancestry, were Japanese Texans whose families migrated starting at the dawn of the 20th century. US law of the time prevented them from naturalizing, so they maintained Japanese citizenship. The most famous of these Texas Nikkei is probably Seito Saibara, the former president of Doshisha University. Saibara came to the region in 1903 to assist with rice cultivation at the request of Houston's Chamber of Commerce and other developers. Soon after, many ambitious Japanese migrants arrived. They came to follow the Texas dream of starting farms or other businesses across the vast Texas landscape, while nurturing a supportive Japanese community. Even over 100 years later, the traces of these dreams still dot the landscape. You can see it in places like Webster, the home of NASA, where Saibara started a 300-acre farm colony, or Pearland, where the mainline Maikawa Road is named after Japanese rice farmer Shinpei Maikawa. The opening of the consulate in 1941 must have been great news for local residents and the Japanese community. I imagine the first consular officials felt a deep sense of duty to build a strong relationship with the local community. At first, a temporary office was set up in the prestigious Warwick Hotel, now Hotel Zaza, near Hammer Park. But soon it moved to a more prominent location on Burlington Street in a quiet residential part of Midtown. I was impressed when I visited the area that its pre-war character is unchanged after so many years. The consulate clearly got a good start thanks to generous arrangements from the city. Beyond promoting trade, the consulate was also directed by the Japanese government to build strong public relations. This is possibly due to the social and political difficulties faced by Japanese immigrants of the era. But soon, the tides of history shifted and the war submerged these relations like a giant tidal wave. The consulate, which was opened less than a year earlier, was closed at the end of 1941 due to the outbreak of war between Japan and the United States. The consulate staff and their families regrettably left the port of Houston on ships returning to Japan. The sense of deep regret they must have felt being faced with such a difficult situation so soon after opening is beyond imagination. After these early years of turbulence, the consulate had to wait until 1959 to reopen, well after the end of the war and return of stable US-Japan relations. How much difficulty had the Nikkei people of Texas experienced in those previous 15 or so years? The answer can be only imagined looking at the complex social circumstances of the era. However, the story of the 442nd Infantry Regiment of the US Army helped ease those difficulties to some degree. That regiment was composed of all second-generation Japanese Americans, or Nisei. They were famous for their motto, "Go for broke," and for their courage saving the Texas Lost Battalion from the fierce battlefield of Europe. Those brave Nisei soldiers and later designated honorary Texans by the state government. After reopening, the consulate steadily expanded its activities and eventually was promoted to a full Consulate-General in 1965. Houston had remarkable economic development at the time, and more Japanese business began locating in the state to follow a new vision of the Texas dream. One after another, Japanese companies discovered region's opportunities and stepped up their expansion. Since that time, local cities, businesses, and industry associations have also become enthusiastic about attracting Japanese companies. In 1967, the Japan Business Association of Houston, or JBAH, was established. At the time, it had only 56 members, including 15 companies. Up until then, the cotton trade was central to Japanese business in the region. But heavy industries like steel, petrochemicals, and machinery soon came to dominate, as Houston became the unstoppable energy capital of the world. Japanese companies also ramped up their investment in oil and gas. The region's economy has gradually diversified since the oil crisis of the 70s, and Japanese companies have followed suit by investing in a wide range of local industries like services, medical sciences, aerospace, and so on and so forth. As of 2021, the JBAH has grown to 758 members, including 112 companies. Japanese business now provide more FDI and create more jobs in Texas than those of almost any country. As I mentioned earlier, there were less than 500 people in the Japanese community when the consulate opened in 1941. Currently, it is estimated that there are about 25,000 Japanese Americans and 12,000 Japanese expats in Texas. What's notable is the accelerating pace of the trend. In the last 15 years or so, the number of Japanese residents more than quadrupled. This is just more proof that a growing number of Japanese companies see Texas as a good destination for investment. As the size of the Japanese community has increased, so has the importance of a mutual understanding and the shared prosperity nurtured through cultural and people-to-people exchanges. The consulate has had many strong partners in those efforts, like the Japan-American Society of Houston, or JASH, first established in 1968. In particular, JASH has built an affinity for Japan among local people by introducing them to its culture, arts, and language. JASH has also supported the heartwarming exchange of people for many years through sister city and youth exchange programs. Similar exchange programs are also active in other major Texas cities like Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio. Japanese gardens across Texas are another symbol of these powerful cultural exchanges. The JBAH was key to establishing Houston's own garden in 1992 with the full cooperation of the city. Its location in Hammond Park is very close to the consulate's original office in the former Warwick Hotel. Local people visit the garden as a place of quiet relaxation where they can experience the culture and the spirit of Japan. Its impact in building a positive image of Japan simply cannot be measured. This garden, like the annual massive Japanese festival in Hammond Park, continues the consulate's original mission of building strong relations with the local public. We are so grateful for the support of so many people who have made such things possible. Recently, I attended the JETRO-sponsored Doing Business in Houston seminar, which was held as a part of virtual visit to Japan by Houston's Mayor Turner. In the seminar, the mayor and officials from the Greater Houston Partnership spoke. Beyond its amazing economic potential, they discussed how Houston is the most diverse and inclusive place in the nation. I myself echoed those sentiments by discussing how the local community warmly welcomes Japanese people and businesses, embracing us like family. 80 years after the consulate's opening, I cannot help but feel thankful to the local community for helping develop such a close, mature relationship. I'd like to stop here and invite tonight's guest speakers to make their remarks. I want to thank these guests who kindly agreed to join this special program and their heartfelt congratulations. I'm truly grateful for the invaluable support they have rendered so that we can continue our important mission at the consulate. Firstly, we are honored to have Mr. Sylvester Turner, Mayor of the City of Houston. He will be followed by Mr. Leia Doran, President of the Japan-American Society of Houston. Then we'll hear from Mr. Glenn Gondo and Ms. Donna Cole, both important members of Houston's Japanese-American community. And finally, we will have remarks from Mr. Kunio Minami, Senior Director of the Japanese Association of Greater Houston.
Hello, this is Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner. It is a great honor to congratulate you on this very special occasion, celebrating the 80th anniversary of the opening of the Consulate-General of Japan in Houston. For 80 years, the consulate has served the needs of the Japanese community in Houston and enriched the cultural and economic well-being of our city. Today, our relationship with Japan is flourishing. Japan is Houston's 9th largest trading partner, with trade values at nearly $10 billion. We are building the first high-speed train system in the United States here in Houston, with plans to use technology from the Central Japan Railway Company. The 5-acre Japanese garden is one of the most beautiful attractions in Herman Park. And Houston's sister city relationship with Chiba City, established nearly 50 years ago, is a premier example of the friendship shared in our vibrant relationship. I want to thank all of our friends at the Japanese Consulate, led by Consul General Fukushima, and the Japanese community for their continued partnership with the City of Houston. Arigato gozaimasu.
Hi, I'm Laird Duran, President of the Japan-America Society of Houston. On behalf of the Japan-America Society of Houston, I want to congratulate the Consulate-General of Japan on the celebration of its 80th anniversary. There is simply no doubt that the support for and the interest in our organization by the Consulate-General has contributed significantly to the success of the Japan-America Society of Houston and to the vibrancy of the U.S.-Japan exchange here in Houston. Together with the Consulate-General, the Japan-America Society of Houston has co-sponsored events such as the Texas State Japanese Language Speech Contest and the Tanabata Star Festival celebration. With the support of the Consulate, the Japan-America Society of Houston has been able to organize signature events such as the Houston Chiba Sister City Youth Ambassador Program and the Japan Festival Houston. The strong relationship that the Japan-America Society of Houston enjoys with the Consulate is largely due to the many exemplary leaders at the Consulate-General who have worked tirelessly to strengthen our partnership and magnify the impact of our work. We are thankful to all of those at the Consulate-General, past and present, who have dedicated themselves to advancing the shared vital interests between the U.S. and Japan. In relatively recent times, Consul General Yasuo Hori led Japanese support for the development of the Japanese Garden in Herman Park. And more recently, Consul General Hideo Fukushima has raised appreciation of Japan's economic and diplomatic importance to our region and the resilience of the U.S.-Japan alliance. These are just two examples of the magnificent senior leadership at the Consulate-General enjoyed by and benefiting the Houston community. Since 1941, the Consulate has worked to create an environment supportive of the full range of Japan's security, economic, political, and cultural ties with America. During the last 8 decades, it has built strong relationships throughout Texas and Oklahoma with federal, state, and local officials, as well as with a myriad of commercial interests, non-governmental organizations, service clubs, academia, artistic groups, and others. The Japan-America Society of Houston looks forward to continuing to work alongside the Consulate to raise the profile of Japan right here in Texas.
Hi, thank you, Consul General Fukushima, for allowing Glenn and I to participate in your 80th anniversary address to the membership. And Glenn and I are just really pleased to participate as somebody who's been very close to the Consul General office as Japanese American. So I'm Donna Cole with Cole Chemical.
I'm Glenn Gondo, Gondo Company. And also I would like to thank Consul General Fukushima for letting us participate with the 80th anniversary of the Consul General's office.
It's so exciting. And you know, throughout the years, I was involved with the Japanese Consulate and the Japan-America Society because of Glenn. Glenn asked me to participate on the board. Eventually I became president. But, you know, throughout the years, the Japanese American Citizens League has been involved with the consulate office, the National Veterans Network, and we just so appreciate the consulate's support in all of our endeavors where we bring together Japanese Americans, Japanese, and the Houston community.
Yes, a little background on myself. My mother and father opened the first Japanese restaurant in Dallas, Texas, 1962, and here in Houston in 1966. The consulate office, when I was president of Japan American Society, was a big supporter of most of our programs, like the Japan Festival or the speech contest, Chiba Sister City relationship, Japanese language classes, and many, many other opportunities that we had. The Consul-General's office was a major supporters.
Well, and we appreciate everything he's done with the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, with the Japanese Garden. Also, anytime that there's an event at the Holocaust Museum or other events, the Consul General just, is right there, ready to speak. And we just appreciate the fact that we can bring in Japanese people, the consulate, and share with them everything that we have in Houston. And, through the U.S.-Japan Council, we've been invited to Japan, and it's just been great. We've had some great relationships with some of the, Governor Koike-san, and also with the Kadenrin, right? And then how about our trip to Japan with the mayor?
Yes, I've taken two mayors to Japan, Mayor Brown and Mayor Anise Parker, to arrange to meet Japanese business people, to exchange goodwill between both countries. And it was very well received when we participated with the Japanese business community in Japan.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping that more Japanese businesses get involved too, because Glenn and I are just so pleased to introduce them to some of the people at the City of Houston, where they can get permits if there's issues, rather than them hiring high expensive attorneys. They can build their own relationships so that they can grow their businesses here in town, and that's part of our bridge, right? So I was introduced to Consul General Kamo. And as they were leaving, we had this nice little party for them with a cake that had a bridge to stay in touch. And so it was great to go to Japan, and Glenn and I had dinner with them. And, we also had dinner with the astronaut Naoki-san. So, I just want people to know that just don't meet people here. Meet them in Japan, and those in Japan who come back, we welcome them.
And I've been a strong advocate for racial prejudice, to introduce Japanese culture to Japanese people, to Estonians. And the Consul General's office has been a big supporter of that. All these programs, as I mentioned earlier, Japan American Society, other organizations such as the Asian Society, the Consulate Office was a major supporter of that. And we promoted Japanese culture throughout each organization. And I was very proud of the Consul General's office for their help.
And your family's been around for a long time. The first Japanese restaurant in Texas and the first one in Houston?
Yes, my mother and father introduced Japanese culture here in Houston through the Japanese food. And I continue that tradition by having sushi bars all over Texas with H-E-B Supermarket to promote Japanese food.
Yeah. And Cold Chemical does business with Toyota and Nippon Shokubai. So, there's also that business relation, other than just the political and the social relationship that we have with Japan and the Consulate-General's office. So thank you very much, and happy anniversary.
Thank you very much also, and continue to live well.
First of all, I congratulate on this special occasion of 80 years since the Japanese Consul-General office was opened in Houston, Texas. I myself have been already here for nearly 40 years with my family, but I was not so much interested in the United States when I was young. In late 1960 or early 1970, I remember the Metropolitan Tokyo planned to send an investigation team to the United States for investigation of newly arriving container operation system. They planned that team visit major ports in the United States and study about facilities, equipment, as well as the railroad operation, rail yard equipments adopted there. And we actually visited 15, 16 different locations within almost 1 month. It was quite helpful, educative. and we, of course, issued the investigation report later on. It was relating to the newly coming international transportation system in containers. So it was very important for Port of Tokyo to get necessary information before they can start up. Visiting so many different locations and meeting many different Americans, I personally got the impression that it is very important to live in a global society. The people have to maintain own character and keep their culture they can proud. And this thought may be still pushing my back to maintain my volunteer activities for the Hammond Park Japanese Garden. On this occasion, I want to express my thanks to the all Japan-related organizations in Houston, Japanese Business Association of Houston, Japanese Association of Greater Houston, Japan-American Society, and also Japanese American Citizens League in Houston. And my special thanks to Japanese Consul-General Mr. Fukushima and his staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the kind, heartwarming messages on this anniversary. They remind us of the full support the consulate has received from this wonderful community. Just as the consulate was about to celebrate its 80th anniversary and long fruitful history, we found ourselves stuck in the COVID-19 pandemic. The entire community is still fighting hard against this awful plague, which has transformed the way we all live and work. However, there's a Japanese proverb which says, "Fortune is unpredictable and changeable." We should bear those words in mind and realize that COVID-19 can also provide opportunities to deepen the bonds between Japan and Texas. The JBAH proved this last year when it donated assistance funds and meals to help local healthcare workers and economically vulnerable people. We must now work to create more resilient and sustainable socio-economic conditions so we can protect against external threats like COVID-19 in the future. Such forward-thinking efforts have steadily begun here in Texas. We are confident that Japan is a trustworthy partner that has much to offer in terms of insights and technology, especially in the industries that Texas prides itself on, like clean energy, medical science, and digital transformation, and so on and so forth. It is this contemporary version of the Texas dream which will overcome the difficulties we have in common and direct us towards greater shared prosperity. In that sense, we can share the vision of a promise that the Japanese community of 80 years ago and their ancestors like Seito Saibara saw when they look at the Texas landscape. In this vast land, we too can see the spirits of hope, cooperation, generosity, and friendship. We at the Consulate-General are extremely honored to have supported the bonds of mutual friendship between the Japanese and the local communities for so many years. I'd like to express my gratitude to all of the communities who have strongly supported this work. With all these thoughts in mind, we humbly request your continued support and understanding on this milestone 80th anniversary so that we can further advance the Consulate's goal of shared prosperity and friendship. This concludes tonight's program on Japan's National Day, commemorating the 80th anniversary of Japanese Consulate in Houston. Thank you once again, for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Good night. おやすみなさい。